Everyone, I'm Tom Ballard, the groundwater guy, and today on our show we're going to talk about the top 10 priorities for small water utilities in 2026. Since it's a new year, we wanted to really focus on what the priorities are, and quite frankly, they haven't changed a lot since last year. We still got a long ways to go to kind of fix some of these things, but we're working on it. And the digital transformation is happening slowly. We're working on that as well, and here we're really advocating that through our Water Masters program. That's a big part of that, is how you transition people to digital data management and improve things really through the digital processes, and go from reactive maintenance to proactive maintenance to preventive maintenance and adaptive maintenance even. And so we've talked about that in a number of shows too, but that's really kind of where we're at on things. We're seeing that digital transformation as a big thing coming up, and it's happening slowly. Resistance to change is a real thing, but we're seeing it happen. So with that, let's dive in, and we're going to look at what our top 10 priority issues are for small water utilities in 2026. So this is really a strategic roadmap for navigating challenges in what's really an increasingly complex operational landscape. There's always things that crop up that make it a little more complicated, and some things just take a long time to resolve and never quite resolve. But we keep working on them, and really the first step is to really recognize what the issues are and how we want to deal with them. Now, these are the ones that we've done some research and reached out to people and found what we think are the top 10 priority issues. But if you have some differences, if you got some other issues, then feel free to drop a comment and in the comments for this video, and let us know what you think, what the top 10 priority issues are. If you got a little bit different priorities, let us know, because we're definitely interested from hearing from you on that. And while we're at it, like, comment, and share this video if you like it, and get the word out there. All right, so what we really want to look at here is critical context of the 2026 landscape. What we have is we got economic uncertainty, and we're seeing, a lot of word from the White House that inflation is under control and all that stuff. But everyone knows that you go to the grocery store, or you try to build anything, and you go to Home Depot even, and we're seeing a lot of inflation out there, and the government isn't recognizing it or acknowledging it, but it is happening. So we're seeing that, and that really introduces economic uncertainty, and not just in the water industry, but a lot of other places too. But the continued strain on household budgets make rate increases politically sensitive and financially challenging. But we do have to look at rate increases. It really is. Water is definitely a bargain. Here in Tennessee, where I'm at, actually, we have the cheapest water rates in the entire country. So that's important. But other places, that's not quite true. But you really need to make sure you're not doing any favors to anybody by deferring maintenance and trying to fix things as they happen, and having your system increasingly deteriorate. So rate increases really need to keep up with your capital needs, and they all work together. Having your asset management plan and your capital improvement plans and understanding what your financial needs are really helps to get your arms around the economic uncertainty. And with that uncertainty introduced out there, it's really something you got to pay more attention to than ever. It's not really the most fun thing to look at, but you really got to pay attention to your finances. And there's ways of doing that, and a lot of this AI that's out there and the digital stuff, we can really do a lot with that to automate that process, to remove the boring, mundane things, and dump that on the computer and the AI, and really get some decent analysis and actually able to dive into that a little bit and understand your numbers a little bit better. Now, technological demands, that's actually kind of the flip side of that same coin is smart meters to AI-driven leak detection create both opportunities and new operational complexity. But the bottom line is you're going to be able to get a handle on some of the things like non-revenue water, for instance, by having the smart meters and being able to do the predictive analysis, you're going to be able to get a handle on that non-revenue water. And wherever you can cut down on non-revenue water, that's going to really increase your economic stability in your system. So any money you can, anytime you're being able to charge for the water instead of just losing it into the ground, that's a good deal because you've already produced that water, you've paid to produce it, so you might as well get paid for it. And that's what the non-revenue water thing is all about, tackling that. Escalating regulations, we're seeing the tight timeline now on the lead and copper rule revisions, and we really need to get a handle on that. PFAS remains a big issue as far as emergent contaminants and not having enough money to pay for everything. There's been some settlements out there, but PFAS continues to be a big deal, and the costs really exceed the available funds to deal with it. Although we're seeing some improvement in the technology for getting it cleaned up, so that's something you really need to keep paying attention to. Climate impacts, extreme weather events, prolonged droughts, shifting water availability create operational challenges. I'm not talking about global warming and that type of thing. We just see that we get some hurricanes or we get different weather events that can put strain on our system. So even just in the normal cycle. So we need to be able to plan for that. Droughts happen, especially if you're out west. But even here in Tennessee, we've had our share of droughts too. So and we really have a lot of water out here, but we have gone through drought conditions even out here. So something you got to pay attention to. All right. And all these challenges are really interconnected. Each one does not stand on its own. It's all connected to something else. So we really have our water utility, as this diagram shows, at the center of things. We got infrastructure, workforce, technology, and finance. All these things are interconnected. These things aren't, this list we're going to go through is not sequential. Everything's interconnected, cumulative, and amplified by limited resources. And most small water utilities, like the people we deal with, tend to have those limited resources. We really got to learn to work around those, whether it's limited finances or whether it's limited personnel. You really, there's usually a limitation on those resources for these small water utilities, and we really need to take that into account in our planning. So you don't want to address these things in isolation. You really want to look at how they work together. So we want to take an integrated approach, and leadership really needs to look at things in total. So when you have the board meeting, you get your managers together, you really want to talk about things in total because it's all going to affect everything. So you want to do resource optimization, so connecting your funding, workforce, and technology strategies to maximize impact and build long-term stability. So if your workforce is turning over all the time, which unfortunately is happening more and more now, it's going to be really hard to maintain stability. You're constantly training people, and probably your maintenance obligations are getting stretched a little bit because of that. So it's important really to look at your workforce. And like I said, these things are all interconnected. So your workforce can affect your finances. So important to know. All right, so priority number one, and everybody probably figured this one out already, is the aging infrastructure crisis. Widespread deterioration of pipes, pumps, treatment facilities, valves, whatever you got. Many are past their design life, and we're really looking at these things limping along, and we live in constant fear of catastrophic failure on these things. So this is where your asset management plan can come in too, is really anticipating what the life of these things is and when they're going to fail so we can really manage these things. But if you don't have enough finances, a lot of times what happens is these things get stretched out because of deferred maintenance, or you don't have the, the, the planning in place and the funding in place to replace these things as they need to be replaced. So he keeps trying to stretch them until they ultimately fail. And everybody knows that things fail at 3 a.m. on Christmas morning. So it's not optimal times, and it's really something we gotta look at and get a better handle on. So this the infrastructure, the asset management plan, the capital improvement plan, these all work together on rectifying this problem is and reducing that deferred maintenance component that is how people finance a lot of these things. So common failure points: distribution pipes through corrosion and ground movement. Certain parts of the country have a lot of ground movement. Pump stations have aging motors. Treatment plants, outdated processes. You may be using more chemicals than you need, and so we're seeing people trying to update these. But treatment plants, even for a modest sized system, can run into the millions of dollars, and that's a big financial shock to your system if you haven't planned for it. So that's where your capital improvement plan and your asset management plan really come into play. So the consequences: we have service interruptions, we have water loss, emergency repairs, customer complaints, and potential Safe Drinking Water Act violations. These are all cost us money. Emergency repairs obviously are very expensive because they're not happening at optimal times, and you got to take time away from something else. So they can be expensive. If you're running around putting your finger in the dike, it's going to be more expensive than being able to plan things out and replace things on a schedule. So average age of water mains in the U.S. exceeds 45 years. Some systems are operating pipes that are over 100 years old. That's just asking for problems. So we really got to look at replacing those things and being able to finance that. And so that's where the asset management plan and the capital improvement plan are really core to a lot of the things we're going to talk about here today. All right, so priority issue number 2, capital funding gap. Once again, that enters into the asset management plan, the capital improvement plan. Small utilities face a growing chasm between capital needs and funding. $680 billion is the estimated need for drinking water infrastructure over the next 20 years. Where is that money going to come from? We've seen some on the right here, we have these key funding sources: state revolving funds, low interest loans are really where most of that money is. The Infrastructure Investment Act, a lot of those things are wrapping up. That was a big chunk of change, and we're likely not going to see that level of federal funding coming out. So this is going to make it even more critical. EPA grants, and I would also add on here that if you're a rural water utility, then the USDA RDA programs are pretty good too for funding sources. So the key challenges are really administrative complexity. It takes time to apply for the funding. There's really not a lot of matching funds, and even things like the state revolving fund, they're low interest loans, or it's a loan, not a grant. Those are supposed to be revolving funds. As the money gets paid back, it's supposed to circulate through the system, but sometimes that doesn't happen. So SRF funds tend to run a little bit low too, and insufficient technical capacity to have the funds coming in and deal with the infrastructure improvements you need, or matching that up with the amount of funding that's available. So that's priority number 2, funding, very important. So priority issue number 3 is our asset management deficiency. And I mentioned this earlier, is asset management plans generally tend to be deficient. Now, here in Tennessee, I will give credit to TDEC. They're requiring you have a functional asset management plan in order to be able to get to qualify for SRF or any other funding, as a matter of fact. So they're really forcing the issue. Most states don't do that, but that's one way to do it. So because the asset management plan, we're dealing with assets in this business, in the water industry, and you got to manage them adequately. You need to maintain them. You need to replace them as they need to be replaced. But if you don't have any idea what the condition assessment is on those things, then you're just shooting it blind. So the problem really is, without formal asset management, utilities struggle to prioritize maintenance. You just don't know where to put your priorities because you don't know what the condition of those assets is. There's difficulty predicting failures, and that leads to reactive decision making. So reactive basically means we're running out and fixing things as they break. That is not a good way to. You at least want to be proactive, so you're doing things or on a scheduled maintenance. Even better is doing the predictive or the adaptive maintenance that we've talked about in other videos. So that's the way to go, and that's what we like to see most small water utilities shifting to. It's a slow process, and like I say, resistance to change is real, but it's something that really needs to be done because there is a big ROI on that investment. And inability to justify funding requests for critical infrastructure. If you don't know what your capital asset needs are, how can you go to your board and justify funding requests? So it becomes a real struggle. So having a good asset management plan, or AMP, really is important part of this process. That feeds into the capital improvement plan, and that's really the basis for the funding for your operation and all the maintenance you're doing. So the solution we're really looking at is the EPA identifies asset management as a foundational practice for sustainability. It's just something you need to do, and you need to pay attention to it. So we're going to offer some cohort groups where we go through and we actually build asset management plans for folks in the Water Masters program. So stay tuned for that. We think that's going to be helpful, where you actually go through and do a 4-week process where you actually build out an asset management plan. That's going to make things run so much more smoothly. So mature program enables proactive, cost-effective decisions and reduces emergency spending. And so that's why I'm talking about you get a good ROI from doing proactive and predictive maintenance. So the core components of this are really asset inventory, understanding what your assets are, where they are, capital planning, that's the capital improvement plan, the condition assessment, knowing the age and the condition of your assets so you know which ones to prioritize for replacements, and performance monitoring so you know if they're going to, we can take the manufacturer's recommendation and say we should replace this valve after so many years, but with performance monitoring, you may have special conditions that means it's failing a little bit earlier, and you need to know that so you can understand when it's important to replace it. So, and you can see we're seeing 30 to 50% lower emergency repair costs with mature asset management in place as compared to without asset management. So it's a huge deal. It's number 3. I might almost place this number 1 because so many other things tie into it. All right, workforce development crisis. Nearly 40% of water utility operators of small systems are over age 55, with many expected to retire within the next decade. Called the silver tsunami. People are aging out. And it's not only replacing that workforce, but it's replacing their knowledge base. If you haven't captured the knowledge from those people that are aging out, you're going to be a world of hurt. So we've talked in other videos about documenting your processes and your SOPs. That's an important part of this because when you bring in new people, they're going to have the knowledge to benefit from the people that have left, and that's why documenting your processes, getting everything into SOPs is so important. So we have an aging workforce with insufficient replacement pipeline. I know a lot of the rural water associations have apprenticeship programs and stuff. It still isn't filling the pipeline, and that's why we got to be more active in this regard too. We need to get younger people coming in to the business and understand that this is something that they need to do. And really, as we shift, and we're seeing actually a lot of high school programs and stuff really shifting towards looking at trades and things like that. We need to get water in there too, so that people understand that that's another career path that they can have where they can make a good living and not have to go to college and get out there right away in the workforce. So there's a critical knowledge gap in complex operations. That's what happens when people walk out the door with all that information in their brain. So an increased risk of operational errors and service interruptions because you don't have that experienced workforce there in place, and so you have new people. They're learning on the job, and it's going to require some getting used to, and you're going to have some problems in the meantime. So the recommended strategies there: conduct competitive compensation analysis and benchmark salaries. So having a competitive salary is one way to get people into the workforce. Launch formal apprenticeship and training programs. We're seeing the rural water associations do just that. We need to get more people into those programs, so maybe more widespread publicity of those programs, and implement knowledge transfer initiatives before expertise is lost. And we've done a number of videos on developing a knowledge base, and we'll probably do some more training on that as well, because it's really important, not only the SOPs, but documenting all your equipment. And there's ways of doing that where you can really speed up the process for new people coming in to learn this stuff. All right. The regulatory compliance burden comes in at number 5. Small water utilities face increasingly stringent regulations requiring resources beyond their capacity. And think about it. If you're a small water utility and you're wearing a lot of hats and you're getting hit with the latest lead and copper rule revisions, that's going to strain your capacity, because now you're inventorying and meeting the requirements of the LCRI revisions, and that's going to take some time, and it just strains your capacity. So speaking of the lead and copper rule, more frequent sampling requirements, stricter action levels. We did a whole video on this, and it's the clock is really ticking on that, so people need to pay attention to that. PFAS and emerging contaminants. PFAS is really a big one because everywhere you look, you seem to find it, and it's hard to get out. I think the technology is getting a little bit better for removing PFAS, but it's still expensive to do, and the funds that are out there on some of these settlements just aren't adequate to cover everything. So it's going to require upgraded treatment systems. Where are you going to get the money for that? So the EPA has got some proposed MCLs for PFAS that you're going to need to meet. So there's going to be a squeeze from a couple different directions here on this. So financial resource challenges, compliance costs can exceed $1 million for small systems just to do the PFAS. Technical expertise, limited staff, specialized knowledge. You may not have the experience running these particular types of treatment systems. So there's going to be some training required, and getting people that can do that training and get up to speed on that stuff is going to take a little bit of time too. And administrative capacity. If the EPA is getting involved with documenting the MCLs, then there's just going to be more complex documentation requirements, both for the treatment systems and making sure you're hitting those MCLs and just reporting requirements as well. All right. Here's another big one. Number 6, cybersecurity vulnerabilities. Small utilities face increasing cyber attack risk due to weaker security postures and limited expertise. And let's face it, when even the big guys are reporting these breaches every day where they're losing their customer data, what's a small water utility to do? I mean, hitherto we have gone through where we're saying, well, we're too small to be noticed, and people are going to leave us alone, so we really don't have to pay too much attention to this. But guess what? It's happening more and more. They're looking for more vulnerable systems, and a lot of times that's going to be the smaller systems. So it's really something that really needs to be paid attention to. You can't use password or 12345 as your password. That's a standard joke, but the default passwords need to be changed. That's a big area of vulnerability, believe it or not. So, but here's where your main vulnerabilities are: is unsecured SCADA systems. So, as more of your systems, as you do more Internet of Things and connected to the internet, and everything is running through your SCADA system, that means you got to have that cybersecurity there. Anything outward facing to the internet needs to be locked down. So many small utilities operate SCADA systems without firewalls, encryption, or access controls. A lot of times the vulnerabilities can come from an operator's cell phone. You have links to your SCADA system in your cell phone, and that's something that can be compromised as well. So you really have to have that lockdown pretty well. We've seen some actual incidents where people have gotten into different systems and cranked up like chlorine levels and things like that, or messed with the chemical feeds. So you can get some potential harm done on these things. Very important to lock it down. And if somebody gets hurt because you didn't secure things, then there might be some legal liability as well you need to think about. So another way that people get in is phishing and social engineering. So employees with limited cybersecurity training, easy targets. You get an email that says, well, click here because you got this problem, and people click on it, and it's not what it seems to be. So you really gotta do regular training, bring somebody in to train people up on this, because very, very important. And outdated systems and delayed updates leave systems exposed to known exploits and vulnerabilities. A lot of people just don't like updating their systems all the time. So it really comes down to they don't do the updates, and that leaves the systems exposed to known vulnerabilities. And you just got to pay attention to that, because those updates are there, especially the security updates are there for a reason. So potential consequences, probably all know this: service disruption affecting your community water supply, potential contamination events, like I mentioned with the chlorine issue, loss of control over critical infrastructure, and even things like ransomware, where you get locked out of your system until you pay a ransom. Those are potential problems. And like I say, we're seeing more smaller systems get hit as the bigger systems lock down their security. They're going to people that are a little bit more vulnerable. Recommended first steps: conduct free or low-cost cyber risk assessment. The U.S. EPA has cybersecurity for water utilities training. Department of Homeland Security also offers that, and AWWA actually has an evaluation tool you can get online that's a free tool. Water ISAC also has some tools available. So there's a number of first steps out there. And we're actually seeing some volunteer organizations that are working with National Rural Water Association to go out and assess cybersecurity vulnerabilities and really help small systems up their game in that regard. So as that rolls out more from NRWA, that might be something to pay attention to and take advantage of if you're a small system. You need to establish basic cybersecurity policies and train your staff on recognizing phishing attempts. All right, number 7, water scarcity and quality challenges. Climate variability, prolonged droughts, emerging contaminants are intensifying challenges in securing reliable, safe water supplies, especially in arid or vulnerable regions. That usually means out west in the United States. We can see some climate variabilities, shifting precipitation patterns, extreme weather events can disrupt our traditional water ability assumptions. For instance, we're seeing, like on the Colorado River, we're seeing really low water levels on the Colorado River due to these prolonged drought conditions that are really affecting the amount of water that's actually available. So that really challenges long-term planning. And prolonged droughts, just what I was talking about. We're seeing water utilities in those areas really being impacted by this as well, and really having to do some water cutbacks as well. Emergent contaminants, PFAS, and other emergent contaminants require significant upgrades to treatment systems and monitoring infrastructure. There's financial pressure, but there's also public pressure too. They want to know what's going on with this stuff. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit too. So, in vulnerable regions, there's certain areas of the country, arid and semi-arid regions, they face disproportionate challenges in securing reliable water supplies. California comes to mind as one of those. So that really puts pressure on existing infrastructure and funding constraints. Number 8, rate setting, affordability balance. Rate setting is always an issue that is a challenge because small water utilities hate raising rates because the customers hate rates being raised. But quite frankly, when you look at the cost of your cell phone or your cable TV, water, even where it's relatively expensive, is still a bargain. So there are some places actually that take and do a modest rate increase every year. It's just kind of baked in. They project what that needs to be, and that's what they do. Or they tie it to the consumer price index. There's ways of doing that. But at a minimum, you're probably going to want to do a rate study every 3 to 5 years to make sure your rates are in line with what your financial needs are. So you're not doing things like deferred maintenance to finance your normal operations. That just is a losing game. So rate increases are necessary, and you don't want to overdo it, but you certainly want to keep up with your financial needs because in the long run, it's better to suffer through a rate increase than to have consistent failures and all the complaints that come with that too, that people are not going to be happy if you have constant failures because you don't have the finances in place to maintain your asset base. So we really need to strike a balance between rate increases and customer affordability. People like low rates and they don't like rate increases. So you're going to have to really justify those rate increases. But I think it's important for people to understand. So that's going to be part of your communication with your customers too. Is what does it cost to run your water utility to give them the clean water so they know they can go to their tap and turn it on and get clean water out and not even have to think about it. And there's a cost to that, and they need to understand that because a lot of them don't even make that connection. But that's on the water utility. We need to communicate more with our customers on how much that actually costs and what goes into that. So there's a delicate balance, finding the equilibrium between financial sustainability and customer affordability. That's where the rate study comes in. And we want to really look at, how do we take the burden off low-income customers? So maybe you have some kind of dual rate structure, some kind of price break if you're, making below a certain level. So there needs to be a little bit of sensitivity in that as well and balance that out. So political sensitivity makes balanced decision-making challenging, but you need to do it. And once again, that's where the communication comes in. So the key challenges are really economic uncertainty is straining the household budgets, like we talked about at the beginning. Aging infrastructure requires significant investment, and this is going to be a challenge getting caught up. If you have a significant deferred maintenance component, you're going to have to get caught up at some point, and you're going to have the funding to do that. So that's going to be really important to take into consideration. So, and regulatory requirements mandate rate increases as well. So if you have a PFAS problem and you don't have all the funding to pay for that treatment, that money has to come from somewhere. So there may not be grant funds to cover all that. So you're going to have to figure out how to do that through your capital improvement plan. Number 9, climate resilience planning. We covered this a little bit earlier, but extreme weather events are damaging infrastructure, disrupting operations, but few small water systems have formal adaptation plans. And that's really a matter of getting into your vulnerability assessments, getting into your emergency planning. If you have something like a hurricane roll through where you don't normally have hurricanes roll through, as happening in East Tennessee and North Carolina, then there needs to be some kind of plan to react to things. You may not plan for that significant event necessarily, but you need to understand that we need to have some resilience in there built in, because not everything is going to go smoothly every day and every year. So you really need to build in that resiliency. So there is some increasing frequency, or it certainly runs in cycles. So you can see that droughts tend to run in cycles. Some of these storm patterns tend to run in cycles. Hurricanes tend to cycle. So it's a matter of looking at those things and planning it out. You could get significant flooding events, and that's something you need to plan for. So infrastructure resilience, critical design infrastructure to withstand extreme weather events, and that's where keeping everything up to date and modernized and having replacing everything as you need to, and having good equipment that's not going to fail with a little bit of problem out there. So you need to have that in place too. Adaptation planning, you need to have adaptation plans. I like to put that into your vulnerability assessment or your emergency planning documents as well. That's kind of where you plan that out, and how are we going to respond to this. And community impact. Climate events affect infrastructure. You got floods, people and water gets contaminated, or water gets blown out, the distribution lines get blown out. So we need to, have the community trust and water security that they expect. So that needs to be part of our planning process as well. And number 10 is public engagement and trust. And this is really important. And it seems like there's never enough time to engage the public like you should, but you really need to. People need to understand, and it's not just you show up when it's rate increase time to justify a rate increase. It's that constant communication with what's going on, so that you build that trust with your customers and the community. So the challenge is really declining public trust undermines community support for essential investments, and people just need to understand. Just even opening up your water treatment plant for tours, and people understand what's going on, and reaching out to the schools and teaching people what goes on, or the local Chamber of Commerce. That these are all avenues you can really reach out and show people what's going on with your system, how it operates, what the funding needs are, and the capital needs, and all the assets you employ, and why it's important, and let them understand what's behind the water that comes out of their tap without even having to think about it. So the key stakeholders are affected, and I apologize, it looks like some of my formatting got messed up here, but we have ratepayers, we have local government, we have environmental groups. These are probably your key stakeholders. There's probably some other ones here that you want to look at as well, but These are the ones you need to be communicating with right there. The impacts of poor public engagement, rate resistance. When it comes time to do your rate increase, you're going to get pushback because they don't understand what's going on and they don't understand what the justification is for that rate increase. Delayed decisions, extended approval processes for critical projects. That's working with your local government. Reduced collaboration, diminished participation in water conservation initiative. So getting people to understand how to conserve water, especially in drought-prone areas, is really important. But if you're not communicating the importance of that, then you're going to get reduced collaboration with that. So communication to the public is something that's often overlooked, except during rate increases or any special events, but it's really something you need to take into account and do more of. So the strategic foundation, infrastructure, and finance focus, like I said, there's interlocking challenges, aging infrastructure, capital funding constraints, absent asset management represent foundational crises facing small water utilities in 2026. So aging infrastructure, as we mentioned, the average age is 45 years with some pipes over 100 years old. So that's not acceptable. So high rates of breaks due to corrosion and ground movement, increased non-revenue water and service interruptions. That's not doing you any good. Capital funding gap, EPA estimates $680 billion needed over the next 20 years in the United States. Huge number. That's just for water. Complex application processes for funding sources. So sometimes you need to pull in some specialists to help you. And that's usually where places like Rural Community Assistance Corporation, your rural water associations can come in and help you with that. So requirement for matching funds and technical capacity. Small systems often lack administrative resources. A lot of these funding things are going to require a certain amount of justification and paperwork. So you're going to have to train your staff on how to do that. Asset management, I can't overemphasize how important asset management is. So it's a strategic discipline linking physical condition and finance. So we got our assets, and how much is it going to replace those assets? It ties together so many components in your water system. So we need a comprehensive asset inventory with GIS integration. And like I say, here in Tennessee, you got to have an asset management plan. That asset management plan needs to have a GIS integration, at least minimally, in order to qualify for any funding. So it's important. Condition assessment and risk prioritization, that's how you're going to prioritize your assets. How likely are they to fail? And we've done whole videos on that as well. Performance monitoring and reporting metrics are also going to help you get at that condition assessment as well. Critical success factors, people and technology. So workforce development and cybersecurity resilience are essential pillars for long-term operational sustainability. So we talked about workforce development a little bit earlier, but as I want to reiterate that nearly 40% of operators are over 55, so we're going to see a lot of retirements. It is the silver tsunami. We need to make sure salaries are in line with what people are expecting, so you can get people in there with a fair salary. We need to invest more in these training programs and the apprenticeship programs. And we really need to work on our knowledge base so we can transfer information from the people that are aging out to the people that are coming in. And cybersecurity resilience, so important. Small systems increasingly targeted due to weaker security postures. We got to change that. And a lot of things you can do are fairly simple, but it has to be done in a mindful manner in order to lock these things down. So we need to understand where our vulnerabilities are in our SCADA systems, as we rely on our SCADA systems more and more to kind of tie everything together and report things. We really need to look at our SCADA system and make sure that's locked down. The human element, phishing, and related types of things that rely on basically social engineering and outdated software. Make sure your software updates are conducted regularly. So, risk assessment. There are tools out there, like I mentioned, EPA, AWWA, Homeland Security, all have cybersecurity assessment tools, and that's really something you're going to want to look at. I know it's boring stuff, but it's something you really got to get locked down and implement password management, multi-factor authentication, and staff training. These are the very basic controls you need to make sure are in place. So the strategic plan forward, there's really three pillars: financial discipline, technology adoption, and strategic collaboration, we call it. So financial discipline, regular rate studies every 3 to 5 years. Like you say, there's some districts out there that do annual rate increases tied to the consumer price index or inflation. You want to establish reserve policies, 10 to 15% of operating expenses. There should be reserve funds available that handles emergencies. You want to develop a 10 to 15-year capital improvement plan or CIP. That's going to give you your long-term capital funding. When do you need the money? Where are you going to get it from? That's all going to be in your capital improvement plan. And you want to map capital needs to available funding sources. So you need to know what those sources are. And word is on the street right now is those federal funding sources anyway are becoming more competitive. We may see less of those. So you really want to understand when you need the money and start jockeying for your position years in advance to make sure that you got it in place. So technology adoption, implement GIS mapping for asset management, deploy advanced metering infrastructure, the smart meters to help reduce water loss, replace outdated building with cloud-based platforms, and establish cybersecurity foundations. So, and strategic collaboration. This is sharing knowledge, and this is really important. This is where things like the rural water associations can come into play. But there's a lot of other regional water associations that you can join, or just even get with your neighboring water districts and do a quarterly lunch and share ideas. So that's important. Explore mutual aid agreements with your neighbors, partner with technical assistance providers, and engage with local governments and communities so that everybody's engaged and knows what's going on, and you have the resources available when you need them. Immediate action framework. There's 3 critical actions for utility boards and management to transform from reactive crisis managers to proactive stewards of your resources. So proactive asset management. You want to develop a comprehensive GIS integrated asset inventory. You want to do a condition assessment and risk prioritization on those assets. That is going to allow you to create a 10 to 15-year capital improvement plan because you know the condition of your assets. You can predict when they're going to break, and now you got a capital improvement plan in place that's going to allow you to replace those assets on a schedule before it becomes an emergency. And you want to establish performance monitoring metrics, or KPIs, key performance indicators, as I call them. We've done a couple videos on how to do KPIs, and it's a useful measuring tool because you're measuring the important numbers. You got a few key KPIs, and you're measuring those numbers. You create a dashboard. You're looking at that, and you're understanding what's going on in real time in your system and where you got potential problems, so you can address the problems, be proactive, and address the problems before you have to do emergency response or reactive management. Workforce investment, another key component. Conduct competitive compensation analysis. You want to make sure you're paying, what you need to pay to get good people in. So launch formal apprenticeship and training programs. You can do that at your level. You can team up with your rural water association to do that, but you need to bring people into the business and get them trained up. Implement knowledge transfer initiatives and develop mentorship programs for operational procedures. And I would even say reach down into the high schools and get people thinking about these things for career and technical education. Partnership development, join or form regional water associations like rural water associations or other organizations like that, mutual aid agreements with neighboring utilities, partner with technical assistance providers, and engage with local governments and community groups. We kind of covered most of that in the last slide. And I think key takeaways and next steps. Resilience is imperative. The path forward small water utilities in 2026 requires strategic foresight and disciplined planning. So we got to get that asset management in place and the capital improvement plan in place and make sure we have the financial foundation to replace our assets as they need to be replaced. So 3 critical actions: commit to proactive asset management and long-term financial planning. That's the AMP, or the Asset Management Plan, and the CIP, the Capital Improvement Plan. Invest strategically in workforce development and cybersecurity, pursue partnerships and external funding opportunities, and don't wait till the last minute to pursue those funding opportunities. As funds get tighter, you're going to want to do that farther in advance. So next step, assess current state, evaluate infrastructure, financial health, and operational readiness. I would say make sure you have an asset management plan in place. And that's where I said our Water Masters program is going to be doing a 4-week asset management plan development course here coming up. And we're going to walk you through, and at the end of 4 weeks, you're going to have at least the outline and a good structure on your asset management plan so you can get it done going forward and get off on that good leg that you need to do proper planning. We want to build strategic partnerships, so develop those coalitions with neighboring utilities and technical assistance provider. They've probably already seen some of your same problems that you have, and they might have come up with solutions. So it might be as simple as asking somebody what the solution is, and you'll have a ready-made answer right there from somebody you have collaborated with. And you want to create an integrated plan. So we want to transform from reactive crisis management to proactive stewardship. So that's where we're going, is we want to quit putting out fires and basically be proactive in our stewardship of our assets moving forward. All right, and this is just basically what we got here. This is just basically an infographic that I'm going to leave up here for just a few minutes that basically illustrates this. If you if you're interested, I can send you a copy of this. Just it's a little reminder to put on your wall of what the priorities are. And as I say, if you have some different priorities, or you think of there's some things that aren't on this list that need to be on this list, then please put that in the comments or email me, and I'll give you my email address here in the next slide. And I'm more than happy to do another show or to look at some of these other things and work with you on that too. So I want to know what your feedback is, because this is based on some research and talking with people that we've done, but different people may experience different situations, and that's why it's important to get this out there and get feedback from folks. All right, so that is our show today. This is my email address and our website. I'm interested in hearing from you on this, and basically not only what the priorities are, but some of the solutions you might have. I'm interested in hearing that. So if you want to get a hold of me, I'm happy to get on a call with you and chat about it. I'm just interested in the information. I'm not going to sell you anything. So, and so I'm interested in the information, because getting good information from the industry and people that are doing this stuff really helps me do better shows and provide better information to you. So that is our show today. Thank you very much. And we will see you in the next show. Hopefully, this has been useful for you.